Day 17, the power of consistency. When people think about success, they often focus on major achievements. They think about the business that became profitable, the athlete who won a championship, the author who published a best-selling book, or the individual who transformed their health and fitness. What they rarely see is the long period that came before those visible results, the months and years during which progress appeared slow, ordinary, and at times almost invisible. This is one of the reasons consistency is so often underestimated. Human beings are naturally drawn to dramatic stories. We enjoy hearing about breakthrough moments and life-changing opportunities because they are exciting and easy to remember. A single event makes for a compelling story. Consistency, on the other hand, is rarely dramatic. It is built through small actions repeated day after day, often without immediate evidence that those actions are making a difference. Yet when we look carefully at almost any meaningful accomplishment, consistency is usually hiding beneath the surface. A person does not become physically fit because of a single workout. They become fit because they continue exercising long after the initial excitement has faded. A successful business is not built during one productive week, but through years of decisions, adjustments, and persistent effort. Strong relationships are not created through occasional grand gestures, but through thousands of everyday interactions that gradually build trust, understanding, and connection. The challenge is that consistency often feels unrewarding in the beginning. When we invest effort into something important, we naturally want to see results. We want evidence that our actions are working. We want reassurance that our sacrifices are producing meaningful progress. Unfortunately, life rarely operates on such a convenient timeline. Many forms of growth occur beneath the surface before they become visible. Consider someone who decides to improve their physical health. During the first few weeks, they may not notice significant changes in their appearance. The scale may move slowly. Their energy levels may improve only slightly. If they judge their efforts solely by immediate results, discouragement can arrive quickly. However, something important is happening, even if it cannot yet be seen. Their habits are changing. Their discipline is developing. Their body is adapting. Progress is occurring, but it has not yet become obvious. The same principle applies far beyond physical health. A person learning a new skill may spend months feeling incompetent before noticeable improvement appears. An entrepreneur may work tirelessly before a business begins generating meaningful revenue. A writer may spend years refining their craft before producing work they are truly proud of. In each case, the visible result arrives long after the process has already begun. One of the greatest obstacles to consistency is our tendency to overestimate what can be achieved in a short period of time, while underestimating what can be achieved over a longer one. People often expect dramatic transformation within weeks. When reality fails to match those expectations, they assume something is wrong. They abandon habits that were working simply because the results were not arriving quickly enough. At the same time, they fail to appreciate the extraordinary impact that small improvements can have when repeated over years. Imagine improving a single aspect of your life by a small amount each day. On any individual day, the change would be almost impossible to notice. Yet over time, those small improvements would accumulate into something remarkable. This is how most meaningful transformations occur. They do not happen all at once. They happen gradually. Because gradual change lacks drama, many people fail to recognize its value. They continue searching for a breakthrough when what they truly need is persistence. They move from one strategy to another, from one goal to the next, hoping to find a faster route to success. What they often fail to realize is that changing direction repeatedly prevents momentum from developing. Consistency requires a willingness to remain committed long enough for results to emerge. This does not mean continuing blindly when something is clearly ineffective. Reflection and adjustment remain important. However, there is a significant difference between making thoughtful improvements and abandoning an effort simply because progress feels slower than expected. The ability to tolerate delayed gratification is one of the defining characteristics of successful people. They understand that meaningful rewards often require patience. They recognize that effort and results are not always synchronized. They continue investing in the process even when the outcome remains uncertain. Perhaps this is why consistency is often less about physical effort and more about trust. At its core, consistency requires trusting that today's actions matter, even when their impact is not immediately visible. It requires believing that small decisions accumulate, that habits shape identity, and that progress is often occurring before it can be measured. This trust becomes particularly important during periods when motivation disappears. As we discussed in the previous chapter, motivation is temporary by nature. There will always be days when enthusiasm is high and days when it is absent. If consistency depends entirely on motivation, consistency will never last very long. People who maintain long-term progress eventually learn to separate action from emotion. They continue showing up even when they do not feel particularly inspired, because they understand that results are often created during ordinary days rather than extraordinary ones. The person who exercises only when motivated will eventually stop exercising. The person who writes only when inspired will eventually stop writing. The person who works toward their goals only when conditions feel perfect will spend much of their life waiting. Consistency asks something different of us. It asks us to continue, not because every day feels exciting, not because every effort produces immediate rewards, but because we understand that meaningful growth is the product of repeated action over time. Another misconception worth addressing is the idea that consistency requires perfection. Many people become discouraged after a setback because they interpret it as evidence that they have failed. In reality, consistency has very little to do with perfection. Life is unpredictable. Unexpected responsibilities appear. Illness occurs. Plans change. Energy fluctuates. No one performs perfectly every day. What matters is not whether interruptions occur. What matters is how quickly you return. A person who misses one workout but resumes exercising the next day remains consistent. A writer who misses a week but returns to the manuscript remains consistent. A business owner who encounters a setback but continues moving forward remains consistent. Consistency is not measured by never leaving the path. It is measured by repeatedly returning to it. As you reflect on your own goals, consider the role consistency has played in both your successes and your disappointments. In many cases, the difference between achieving a goal and abandoning it is not intelligence, talent, or opportunity. More often, it is the willingness to continue long enough for the results of consistent effort to emerge. The habits you repeat today may seem small. The choices you make this week may feel insignificant. The effort you invest this month may appear ordinary. Yet these seemingly ordinary actions are quietly shaping the person you are becoming. Over time, they influence your character, your confidence, your abilities, and your future. That is the true power of consistency. Not that it creates dramatic change overnight, but that it transforms ordinary actions into extraordinary results when given enough time. Flexion questions. 1. In which area of your life would greater consistency create the biggest improvement? 2. Have you ever abandoned something that may have succeeded if you had given it more time? 3. How do you typically respond when progress feels slow? 4. Are you focusing more on immediate results or long-term growth? 5. What small habit could you commit to maintaining consistently? Daily action step. Choose one habit that supports a meaningful goal and commit to practicing it every day for the next 7 days. Focus less on the size of the action and more on the consistency of the action. At the end of the week, reflect not only on the results, but also on the trust and confidence you built by keeping your commitment. Success affirmation. I understand that meaningful growth requires time. I trust the process, remain committed to my goals, and know that consistent actions create lasting results.